Hi, I'm Milena, welcome back to my channel and welcome to what will be, I think, a 3-day vlog. I've been wanting to do some fun vlogs, making some fun TBRs, since I'm taking a little break from TBR board. So, a while back, I got the Literary Witches Oracle cards, which I don't think this is a full-blown tarot deck, which means that they can be an addition to a tarot deck. I do have another tarot deck that I use sometimes, but these are cards that you can pick just one of and read a little bit about, and most of them, not all of them, but most of the cards are about authors, so every card has their own female witchy author. I will leave a link to like an Instagram or a website about the creators if you want to read a little bit more about them. I've been having a lot of fun with them so far, and I have a little thing on my desk where I put the card in that I picked, and then I can just look at it for a bit. And I've been looking at a card called Bravery for quite a while, and it's been really nice to look at, to be honest. So yesterday evening I picked 3 cards and I will show you those cards and tell you a little bit about them. And I've made a TBR for every card. Of course, I could have chosen to read something by the author that I picked, but I decided to really look at what the card means and pick a book for my own TBR, which I really want to read more from, that matches that. First card I picked is just a card of my heart, and that is Toni Morrison, and it says Power. I will read to you what it says in a little booklet. Toni Morrison, Power. Owning power, seizing power, the powers at play. No American writer is more honor-layered than Toni Morrison, born in 1931, who was born to a working-class family in Lorain, Ohio, a frequent setting for her epic novels of black experiences. Her most famous work, Beloved, has become required reading. I'm really looking at the 3 words that you can see on the top. I hope you can see, that says owning power, seizing power, the powers at play. So when I went to my own TBR, I found a play by Carson that is about the power of beauty, the power of female beauty, and this is called Norma Jean Baker of Troy. I have read only one thing by Carson and I loved it, and it was so powerful. And this literally said, Norma Jean Baker of Troy is a meditation on the destabilizing and destructive power of beauty. I've been wanting to get this into a TBR for a while, so this is the first one I want to read for this TBR. The second card I pulled was Mirabai. So on the card it says the words devotion. It says worship, passion, the sublime. Instead of attending to her royal and wifely duties, Princess Mirabai, born around 1450, wrote intense erotic devotional poetry to the god Krishna, whom she thought of as her lover. Mirabai's in-laws loathed her unconventional ways, and she miraculously escaped their poisoning attempts twice. When the in-laws tried to bring her back into the family, Mirabai spent the night at a Krishna temple and disappeared. Legend has it that she merged with Krishna's image that night or continued on her spiritual pilgrimage in disguise. So again, I'm gonna focus on the 3 words worship, passion and the sublime. And I'm not entirely sure how well this fits, but my idea of it really fits, and that is The Prophet by Khalil Gilbran. These are essays in verse. I've read a little bit about it, and it's a lot of meditations on life as well. And since she was a poet as well, this is also, I think, about religion, about spirituality. So I think it should kind of fit. This is a gift I got from Lucy at Crescent Pages, and I know that she loves his writing. She read quite a lot by Gilbran, so I'm really excited to get it on the TBR and to read it. And I think it kind of fits the essence of the tarot card, but I of course will discuss that when I've actually done the reading. The final card I picked, for which I already started the book as well on the same evening, is Sylvia Plath, which is dark. And this illustration, if you want to pause it and look at it, it is fascinating. I've been staring at it for quite a while. It's also very, very dark. If you've read The Bell Jar, then you probably know why this is the dark. Living in the dark, intensity, fury. Born in Boston, Sylvia Plath, 1932-1963, was a social and academic success in spite of severe depression and suicide attempts. On a Fulbright scholarship to Cambridge University, she met and married the poet Ted Hughes. Plath stayed home with 2 young children and wrote increasingly brilliant, scary poetry that made use of the anger at her husband and her father intense mental states, and obsession with death. Plath's story always reminds me a little bit of the story of another author, and that is Rhys, and the title of this book literally said Voyage in the Dark, so it definitely fits the tarot card. But Rhys lived earlier. She was born in 1890 and she also had a very turbulent life, a very turbulent love life as well. She was born in the West Indies and moved back to England, Her family was English, but she was born in the West Indies when she was 16 years old and stayed there for most of her life, or she stayed in Europe at least. And this is about a young girl called Anna when she is 18 and she lives in London, and she really doesn't like it in London. She's a chorus girl. I think it is her stepmother or her aunt, I think it's her aunt, who is her legal guardian or who is supposed to take care of her, but she does a very poor job. She is financially dependent on herself until she finds this man and becomes his mistress. So it's quite a scandalous story, but it's mainly a very dark story. The character and the narration kind of reminds me of the main character of the Bell Jar. So this is a very autobiographical story of Rhys, and that's why I wanted to read it. I am now 52 pages in and it's 150 pages long. So I can definitely say that it fits the tarot card. This book has been on my TBR multiple times, but I think I've always been a little bit intimidated by it because I know it is so dark. It's interesting to read from the perspective of what I guess you could call a fallen woman, or more like a fallen girl, because right now in the novel she is 19 and I don't know if the whole pregnancy thing is also going to happen to the main character. I think, maybe I remember it wrong, but I believe it happened to Rhys, especially so close after the Victorian era, because I think this is at the end of the First World War, or maybe just like 1819, something like that. So these 3 books are the ones I want to read, I think in the next 3 days or so. I was kind of in a mood for classics because I was reading some other books, some non-classics, and I thought, you know what, I want to get back to classics. I want to kindle my love for classics again. I think I will try to finish this today, and then tomorrow I will read these 2. On other news, I did also get the mini library to my home. I made a video, it must be 2 years ago now, where me and my dad built a mini library. We did have to change that one a little bit because it wasn't really built for the outdoors, but I moved this winter and now I live in a home where I can place a mini library. So my dad and I decided that it would move to my house. So what I need to do is to just give it a little bit of care. I need to clean it. I don't think I have to repaint it, but maybe add some touches, add some personal touches that kind of match the front of my home. I kind of like doing that, and I need to build something where it can stand on. It won't be the same as it was at my parents' house. And I also got a big stack of books right here. I'm not gonna lift it, it's too much, from books that I wanted to unhaul anyway. For every book, I thought this would be fun. I added a little description of what you can expect from the book, because of course most of these books I have read, but I'm just parting way with. I'm just giving like the genre, the setting, maybe an important like trope, and then the language, because some of these are in Dutch and some of them are in English. I'm not sure how much I get done of that today, but I might do the cleaning and stuff and do a little bit of reading. Turns out today it is very hot again. It is super sweaty, and what has happened to my braids? I do not know. I didn't really get to do anything with the mini library because I had to do a lot of things in the house, so I did that while I listened to a really nice recording of The Prophet, where a man just very slowly, very calmly on YouTube reads this, and you can also see the text while he's reading it, which I really love, so would recommend. I'll leave it down below. This is basically a self-help book, but then in a time when people didn't have self-help books. I think we have The Prophet. I think he is our main character, or he's not our narrator, but he is the one who is talking to a group of people, and then someone asks him a question like, tell us about homes, tell us about beauty, tell us about pain. And then we get a chapter where he talks about that, and he philosophize. That's not a word. Meditates on it. Very interestingly. Was it published in the 30s? No, 1923 is when this was published, and it's a lot about individualism and responsibility in the way that you're responsible for your own actions. And I think sometimes responsibility for your own actions, but also for how your actions influence the people around you, which I found was really interesting. So far, the chapters on housing and crime and punishment was one of my favorites, because there's this quote, I'll look for it in a bit, about how your home is an extension of you. And his view on crime is, all of the things in this book are debatable from a modern perspective, because this book is like exactly 100 years old. He talks about how crime is a responsibility of a society, and it's not just one person committing a crime, but also I think like the society being responsible for why he commits that crime. I like that he talks about the common responsibility, but also individualism, which I think is quite strong, especially from this time period. I'm not sure if I fully understood the chapter on religion, but I liked when he said that you still need to have reason when you're praying, because there's a chapter where a priestess asks, what about praying? When he talks about houses, he also talks about how people in the society build other houses within city walls. For even as you have homecomings in your twilight, so has the wanderer in you, the ever distant and alone. Your house is your larger body. I love, like, if I was ever going to have a tacky quote in my hallway, it's going to say, your house is your larger body, Gilbran. It grows in the sun and sleeps in the stillness of the night, and it is not dreamless. Does not your house dream, and dreaming, leave the city for grove or hilltop? It's really beautiful. I can see why Lucy loves it so much, because I know that she enjoys this kind of lyrical poetry, and I would definitely classify it as poetry. There is a narrative in it. It's not a collection of poems. It's very much this prophet, this man, talking to a group of people and basically teaching them about life. It's not that late yet. I think it's about 4 o'clock. I might also read a few pages of Voyage in the Dark, and I'll keep the play for tomorrow. Right, I finished it. I like the connection it kind of had with the author, with the tarot card, because of the fake ending of the protagonist slash author, because her ending is drenched, I think, in myth, because of course it is a religious idea that the booklets say, it says something about her becoming one with Krishna, or her continuing life as an anonymous worshipper of Krishna. And our prophet kind of plays, I think, with the idea of a rebirth. Maybe it is much more clear than I could understand, but I like the way that it held some fakeness, and in the end it even said, don't be afraid of fakeness, don't be afraid if this sounds fake to you, because fakeness is where things start but not where things end. And I found that was beautiful. And he also physically leaves the people that he has been talking to, and there's a possibility in thinking that his new journey is his rebirth, because he says, another woman will bear me again. I thought this was written so beautifully. I think I said in the last clip that it is translated, but it is not. The author was Lebanese but also lived in the US, I believe, so I think he wrote the original in English. So I think I will end up giving this 4 stars, but it's not really the kind of thing that you need to rate. But thank you again so much, Lucy, for the copy. Right now I'm gonna go downstairs and see if the cats want to cuddle. I found them in the garden. It's almost 30 degrees outside, which is just, I do not dwell well with warm weather, and the cats are just napping the way they would nap on the sofa, but in the garden on the dark grey tiles, which are very hot. I don't understand them, because it's so much hotter outside than it is inside, but they seem to enjoy it. So I'm gonna give them some cuddles, gonna make dinner, and then read a little bit of Voyage in the Dark. Good morning. It is, I think, the last day of this vlog, and I finished this morning Voyage in the Dark, and this was definitely dark. It very much fits the Sylvia Plath card and the description of it. It has the same kind of darkness where I think this main character also really grapples with depression. It's not really discussed in the setting of mental health the way it is in a bell jar, but this was of course a few decades earlier, and we really see the concept of the fallen woman from her own perspective. And wow, this was really impressive, I think, when it came to content. I thought it was really beautiful to read from the perspective of Anna and how she experiences everything. She's not necessarily a likable character, but it is interesting to be in her mind. And of course we have that part where she doesn't have any family that takes care of her. She doesn't have any financial stability. It is that thing where women are denied an education, as she was, and therefore she doesn't have any options when it comes to finances. And I guess the way these women lived is a form of prostitution without them acknowledging the fact that it is prostitution, and it's not in a voluntary manner. So the ending was quite heartbreaking of this one. I think there's also very much a political message in this book. The writing I'm not so sure about. I love the writing in White Sargasso Sea. White Sargasso Sea was written 30 years after this, so of course you can definitely see that there's still that stream of consciousness, but here the stream of consciousness is kind of combined with a matter-of-fact writing, and I don't think those two writing styles really dwell well with each other, because I think the beauty of stream of consciousness is that there is so much room for metaphor and lyrical writing, and this definitely wasn't lyrical at all. So I had a bit of a hard time picking this up and reading a lot of it in one go. So the writing I wouldn't rate super high, but the content matter and the way we see depression, the way we see homesickness, because you can very much see that Anna prefers the West Indies. She prefers the culture there over England. She says, I think about 4 times about England, everything was so exactly alike. That was what I never could get used to. And the cold, and the houses all exactly alike. All the streets going north, south, east, west, all exactly alike. So that is kind of the stream of consciousness that you can see in this novel, and I thought this was one of the more beautiful quotes. There's a lot of racism and xenophobia in this book explored from the perspective of our main character Anna. She kind of challenges other people, especially in England, who portray that kind of behavior, not necessarily only in England, but just English culture in general. I mean, Anna is no saint, but I thought it was interesting how she looked at race, and that's really present in White Sargasso Sea as well. So I think that's just really a part of Jean Rhys's writing. Overall, I don't really know how to rate this. It's like 3.5, 4 star. I'm happy that I finally read this, and I do own more books by Jean Rhys. I'm curious to see how her later work is written when it comes to stream of consciousness. I hope it's a little bit more like White Sargasso Sea, a little bit more fine-tuned. This was fine, but it didn't come close to White Sargasso Sea. Content, themes, just as good, but the writing definitely is an earlier work. So this one can go back in for now, and then we just have our final read. Cats are following me around today as if I've forgotten to feed them, which I really haven't, so I don't know where all this loving is coming from, but all of them seem to love this sofa and they just come and cuddle and go crazy. And I just left this room and they all came after me like a couple of ducks, like on their mother, which has been cheering my day. But I did read Norma Jean Baker of Troy by Anne Carson. This is a play. It's only 60 pages long, so I honestly don't know really what to tell you about it. I did say that I was going to read classics, but somehow Anne Carson is in that category of classics for me, even though this was written or published in 2019. This is way newer than I thought it was. What is it about? It's like a difficult question. So we have Norma Jean Baker, so who's Marilyn Monroe, but she's never called that. There's only one hint in the whole play when she's talking about signing autographs and she doesn't know where to put the I and the Y. The only hint to the fact that she is called Marilyn Monroe. But we have Norma Jean Baker who is knitting, and we find out that she is knitting a tapestry of the War of Troy. So we have her just talking about things, and her life is infuse, is that the right word, with Helen of Troy, because I think there are some similarities within their story where you have this woman who is seen as the most beautiful woman in the world and how she is also villainized with that. We have the men in their life. Hollywood and Troy are basically the same thing, and I really like how Anne Carson used language to fuse these two storylines together, because we mainly follow the character of Norma Jean Baker, so Marilyn Monroe, but the language is all around the fact that she is in a war in Troy. I don't really know how to explain it, but it's quite interesting. And then we have her sometimes looking like herself, sometimes looking like Truman Capote, which I think there's probably more to it, but I don't know a lot about Truman Capote. But oh, maybe is it because of like Breakfast at Tiffany's and then that actress also being like a Marilyn Monroe type woman? Maybe, not entirely sure. And then we have History of War, different kind of lessons that look like this. I wonder how they showed that in the play. Did they just read it out loud, and who read it out loud? It doesn't have any stage directions or anything like that, which I find strange. I usually do like to have that in a play where it's like describing the set as well, which I really love. But it's interesting because it's all about the Trojan War in a from a very lyrical perspective. This is so hard to talk about, so hard to explain. I felt like Autobiography of Red, which is a book that I also read by Anne Carson, is equally strange and hard to talk about. I would not know where to start in rating this because no, I honestly do not know. This is basically all I could say about the play. I think it will be interesting to see it performed. I don't know if there's anything on YouTube. I will look for it. That concludes the reading for this vlog. Voyage in the Dark is on my desk, but these are the books and Voyage in the Dark that I read for this vlog. I think maybe The Prophet was my favorite of this vlog because I just really liked the lyrical, poetic experience of this. I definitely want to do more fun vlog ideas. If there's anything you would like to see from me vlog wise, if you would like to see me try something, if you have an idea, leave it in a comment down below. And for now, I hope that you have a lovely day or evening, and I hope to see you in another video. Doei!